what a very damning article, and bombshell of an article at that, to really just showcase what's been going on behind the scenes with Crunchyroll and how they are bleeding money. You have legitimate manga publishers like Shokukan and Shueisha and Kodansha upset with Crunchyroll's management of merchandising goods. You have Toho and Toei upset with Crunchyroll's, overall ability to hold a concert for One Piece, and their overall relationship has deteriorated, to even offers outlining that they're very upset with how their characters are used, and that they, are used in ways that they did not want. This is stuff that we kind of were aware of, but to just see an article piece this all together and just give us such a massive bombshell to Crunchyroll is pretty wild stuff. I mean, we even have Crunchyroll just straight up admitting that they didn't want to advertise Dawn to Dawn because they didn't have exclusive rights to the actual series, because they only wanted to actually advertise stuff that was just solely theirs, their exclusive rights to, which is just insane because they stood to make so much money. But then on top of that, you have stuff like this, to where thanks to their gaming division, they continue to lose so much money. For instance, like there's so many parts of their gaming division that is failing with the mobile games they have on their side of Crunchyroll, that they are just having to close one after another, and it's just losing them a lot of money. They cannot make any successful game. And then they have very low turnout rates, for instance, churning rates for their subscription service, aka those that, want to not stick around and be a subscriber anymore to Crunchyroll. It's very clear Crunchyroll is not doing so hot, which is wild, because this goes completely against what me and so many others have been talking about for a good while now, and that is Sony's monopoly and Crunchyroll's monopoly on the anime and manga industry in the West, and merchandising as well. How can a company so powerful, so massive in scale, that has such a grip on the market, possibly be hurting to this degree? And they are showing warning signs of potentially being shut down, like closing their doors, so to speak. Now, I do want to clarify this, because I know it's going to be in the title. If they are going to get shut down, it's going to be a long time from now. Like, we're talking 4 or 5 years from now, if they don't course correct. If Crunchyroll does not correct their fundamental issues and all the problems that they have been facing back to back, then yes, their doors definitely will close. However, I want to make sure I say this before going any further with this video. Even if theoretically Crunchyroll somehow was to close their doors a year from now, okay? 5 years, a year from now, whatever, just something would replace them. For instance, Sony still owns all the rights and the licensing and stuff. They could just plant a new company in the space of Crunchyroll that does not have the negative perception that everyone views them as. It would be a fresh start, so to speak, which eventually might be the goal. Regardless if Crunchyroll does well or not in a course correct, I could definitely see maybe 5 to 10 years from now, Sony removing the Crunchyroll platform and replacing it with a new service that's under a complete umbrella of all their stuff, and allowing, them to remove themselves, disconnect from all the bad press that Crunchyroll has garnered for the last decade plus at this point. So let's get into everything so far. So first off, we need to talk about this. Japanese manga publishers being upset with how Crunchyroll manages merchandising rights. Now, there's a lot to really take away from this section within the article that Bloomberg posted, but one thing I do want to say is that this segment really does make a lot of sense, especially with what they did with Right Stuff, and how a lot of stuff was kind of removed as well because it was more on the adultish side. 5% or whatever of their total sales apparently came from content like that, and it was removed from the store. And even though it's just 5%, that's still a lot, technically, in terms of sales. This article kind of covers that as well. So I feel like there's a lot of things going on here, too. How merchandise is probably sold on Crunchyroll, but also just how they handle goods that are more of the spicy variety. It's probably kind of a headache to work with because, obviously, content from Japan, there is a lot of spicy merchandise, a lot of covers to a lot of figures, body pillows, etc. So it definitely could be a little bit annoying. So I think that the overall complaint here is probably because of how their merchandise is advertised or not shown or whatever. This gets into probably the Dawn to Dawn stuff as well I just talked about. But anyways, another big aspect of this as well to talk about is this one. Toei and Toho being upset. huge companies within Japan upset with how Crunchyroll displays and holds like concerts for One Piece, which, let's be honest, is massive. It's huge. One Piece is a huge series that harbors a lot of value to a lot of people within Japan, and especially Toei, since they have been animating it for like 2+ to almost 3 decades at this point. It's very clear that they would be very protective of their IP and properties. So the fact that there is definitely a wedge forming between Toei and, let's say, Crunchyroll has been very apparent for a bit now. I mean, especially when you see how One Piece has been kind of a little bit more focused on Netflix as of late, to the live action, to just like how Netflix got a little bit more rights with One Piece as of late in the last year or so. It's clear that Toei is starting to expand their overall services to other properties besides, let's say, Crunchyroll. And I think that this gets into the fundamental issue of how they've been managing all these works within the West that's causing a lot of issues with these Japanese companies. This one as well. This is manga authors legitimately complaining about how their characters were used in ways they did not want. This most likely comes down to localization and dubs. We are all probably very aware of how there's been some dubs on Crunchyroll that has just shifted the entire meaning of the series to fit an overall agenda. There is multiple examples of this, but one of the most obvious ones that is referenced a lot is Maid Dragon. And so when you factor all that in, it makes sense why there would be offers and stuff of these very big series upset with how their stuff is, displayed within, let's say, the West. For instance, either through censorship or bad translations, whatever the case may be, it makes sense. So this is stuff that we were kind of all aware about for a while, but this one is also very interesting to me. So there's a lot more details to take away from this, which I'm going to cover, but I do want to say a few things before I go any further with talking about this subject. So I talked to a few people that were insiders at Crunchyroll, or those that used to work at Crunchyroll, very credible sources I talked with, and they confirmed to me that this article is quite legitimate, that this is pretty much on the money, legitimate on what's going on inside of Crunchyroll at this given time. And now there is a few things that a few of them told me that it doesn't outline properly, like, just because Crunchyroll is bad doesn't mean Netflix or Amazon is any better. They also do a lot of heinous stuff behind the scenes, which is a given. Corporations in general usually do some very shady and evil stuff, so that is basically, yeah, it's very believable. It really comes down to the lesser of evils when it comes to these companies, but Crunchyroll's obviously been in the constant spotlight, so in a lot of people's public perception of them, they are the #1 villain. But I'm getting a little bit off topic. So basically, this article was confirmed by sources that, yes, it is legitimate. This is definitely accurate and all that, and I'm not going to name them because obviously if I was to name them, they potentially could get fired, they could, lose their job, they can, a lot of problems within the industry if they were to be known. So, I understand and respect that they don't want to shit where they sleep and work, so it makes sense why they would want to remain anonymous, and that gets into the main thing. This article, most of the people that gave the information in this article were former or current employees at Crunchyroll, and they also wanted to remain anonymous. So most likely, the individual I did talk with might have helped with this article, maybe I'm not. All I'm going to say is that it makes a lot of sense. Anyways, we got to get into this. So, Crunchyroll is struggling to hang on to subscribers, with insiders saying its 2025 target has been pushed to the year end, aka the target that was meant to be there maybe at the beginning of 2025 or in the middle, has now been pushed as far back to the very end of 2025. That's not good. Usually when something like that happens, it's a sign, a red flag, so to speak, within a company. Shareholders and all sorts of stuff are going to get a little bit upset and be like, what's going on here? Why you're not meeting your target? Why you're not making as much money? What's going on here? And then shareholders and stuff will get very scared. They'll back out. You get the point. The main thing here is that apparently Crunchyroll is not able to meet their targets. Their churn rate, if you don't know what this is, it means basically the loss of subscribers. It means that active subscribers are people that want to continue subscribing to Crunchyroll service. They're no longer around, and they're losing about, 8.5% monthly, which is apparently higher than the 5% churn rate average according to streaming services. Now, I did ask one person that, gave me a little bit insight into this. Apparently, Apple TV and stuff, their average churn rate is like 10%. That's incredibly high. I still think that is insane, but it does put the numbers in perspective on how many subscribers they are currently losing. Anyways, to the main point here, I think that what this is basically showing, even if Crunchyroll is having, let's say, exponential growth and that they are gaining a lot of subscribers thanks to the overall popularity of anime as of late since the 2020s thanks to COVID times. It's clear that their expectations are so unrealistic that they're not able to meet them, which could cause the bigwigs, the CEOs and stuff at the top to try to course correct, and maybe course correct too much, and they'll start firing people, they'll start doing things, and all sorts of other little things that cause the company to be relatively worse, to try to save money, to be able to meet the target focus, whatever, and it's just going to make the platform overall worse, which gets into the other subject of the public perception. So, despite obviously, them having a higher churn rate than the parent average, we need to explain or talk about why this is happening. Well, I think it is a no-brainer. In the last year alone, Crunchyroll has continuously shot themselves in the foot with very bad PR decisions. I mean, one lately, as of late, was where they completely had a voice actor, a dubbing voice actor, working at Crunchyroll, having their mail stolen and shared around the office. I don't know how far they can go. According to what I found out, apparently he might not be able to do much about it, which is absolutely messed up. It is really, really messed up that is potentially going to happen, and he will never get his fan mail back. But Crunchyroll has always done some very shady stuff, to mistreatment of employees, a hostile work environment, to just having, this agenda pushed within dubs and localization, translated words and stuff. ReZero is a recent example. It had a lot of stuff on Crunchyroll's site that was mistranslated and not done very well for ReZero's anime. And then you have delayed subtitles, AI subtitles. You have them removing of comment section on their platform, which basically meant that Crunchyroll said directly to the subscribers, we don't want to hear you. That's literally what they said. They might as well just said, put the duct tape over your mouth. We want your money from your wallet, but we don't want to hear you. That's what they said. That is what they said to their core subscribers. You're not able to even put a comment on news articles and reviews anymore as well, and it just basically showcases that they have disconnected themselves from the very community that they have cultivated and tried to build for all these years. It makes a lot of sense why their turnover rate is probably increasing, or their churn rate, my bad, is increasing, because they have silenced the community that would be very vocal and at the very least tried to support them. So their image has become very negative, and so this gets into the title that I have on screen that you can see. The title, is about them potentially shutting down, the fears of Crunchyroll shutting their doors, and the reason for this is because Sony might look at the whole situation and all the drama, all the issues that obviously has taken place, and after this article really outlining and starting to make waves in the community, definitely can lead to Sony wanting to distance themselves from Crunchyroll's brand and trying to create a new brand that it streams anime that won't have as much controversy around it. I could definitely see that being the future, because I think that is the inevitable at this point. Crunchyroll just cannot get themselves out of hot water. They continue to make mistakes, continue to make blunders, continue to make flops of mobile games and stuff that shut down over and over, to the lack of advertisement for some things like Dawn to Dawn. It is a continuous thing that continues to just hurt their image more and more with Japanese companies, and I think these Japanese companies are really just starting to get tired of the whole situation. And so I could see that it's only a matter of time. Maybe not in the next year, but maybe in the next 4 or 5 years, I could probably say that maybe Crunchyroll might not exist. Unless they course correct, which you have to do a lot of course correcting. But I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. Do read this article. I have it linked in the description. You can check it out for yourself. But be safe, stay healthy. Chibi out.